Well, thank you for coming to today's session. I'm going to be talking about good behaviours, marketing with intent, and specifically walking you through some key things that you can look to automate, some behavioural actions to start automating, looking at some client examples and what works, why it works, so that you've got some real actionable things to take back with you. So I've got a lot of content, not very much time, so I'm going to rattle through. Should be some time for questions at the end, and if not, I'll be here after or on our stand just out here. But ultimately, we're living in an age where we're overloaded by messages. I, for one, get at least 100 email messages a day into my inbox, and consumers are tuning out. Getting yourself heard above this noise as marketers is increasingly difficult. And although it's tempting and we all do it, pounding away at this is just not the answer. If sales are low, you want to send out an email to everyone, drive people to the site. But this kind of behaviour is ultimately more hope as a strategy, which is not successful. So what I want to talk to you today about is how to move from this batch and blast approach towards behaviour and automation, and look into what that means. So if you can imagine a world where you're not talking to audiences, you're not talking to segments of your customers and prospects, but if you could have hundreds, thousands, millions even of unique one-to-one dialogues, conversations with every one of your customers and prospects, and what if that was able to be scalable? What if you could manage that within the resources that you have? Well, that is exactly what behavioural marketing is and what it allows you to do. It's when you start to combine individual behaviours with automation, and by doing that, driving higher response rates, higher engagement rates. So again, it's messaging beyond segments, moving from the left-hand side here to the right. From treating them as a single audience to then basic demographic or profile segmentation, age, gender, so on. But really taking an individual's behaviours, what they do, what they don't do, and automating that. And that, combined, allows you to achieve unprecedented granularity and conversations with those people. You're looking at segments of one. It's important to note that you really need both. You need the behavioural side and the automation side to really see the results. If you have automation without the behaviour, you're really just automating those messages that you send, and you're not telling people really, you're not getting the most value out of those conversations. And behaviour without automation is an unscalable amount of data that you're unable to process. So behavioural marketing is this idea of incredibly relevant campaigns, communications with your audience. Real time, you're communicating at the time when they most want to hear from you based on the action that they've taken. Cross-channel, again, looking at this right message, right time, and right channels. So it may be that Lucy here at the bottom wants to communicate with you over social, over Facebook, and prefers kind of ebook to read things over ebooks, whereas somebody else, for instance, might prefer email, but at a certain time of day, and so on. So I'm sure you've heard a lot about this kind of power shift from the company, from the marketer to the individual. Customers are taking control of the buying cycle. They are looking for information. They're doing an awful lot of research before they make that eventual buying decision. And so it's becoming less and less about telling them as marketers what you believe they want to hear and telling them about you, but listening to what they're telling you in terms of how they're reacting, how they're interacting with you. And to do this, to respond to this, marketers need a new plan, a new model, new tactics, and potentially new technology. So again, looking at this in terms of response rates on the bottom and engagement, where it improves as you go to the right, and on the y-axis, the increase in sophistication. Mass marketing is kind of is manual. It's fairly easy. It gains okay results. As you move beyond that, targeting based on segmentation, again, as I mentioned, gender, male-female splits, age, and so on. As we then moved into the more automated message types, you can see that the expected response rates are incrementally improved. So time-based messages, drip campaigns, basic nurture campaigns. And then looking beyond that, we're starting to get into the realm of behavioral marketing, multi-track behaviors, people receiving messages based on behavior they've taken. I'm going to go through some specific examples. And finally, really looking, aiming towards this B2 where it's behavioral based on that individual's actions. It's the right message, right channel, right time. And listening more as marketers rather than speaking. And when you do speak, that you're telling them things of interest and of value. A study by SNS Worldwide showed that triggered campaigns, by and large, only consist of about 5% of overall email volume. But they generate over 40% of sales. So if we can look at ways to increase the automation, which ultimately also helps from a resourcing standpoint, the more you can automate, the less work that requires, then we can also look to increase even further the sales generated from those email campaigns. Our studies have also shown that behavioral triggered campaigns outperform by about 3 times to a standard blast campaign. So, looking at some examples of behavior, these can be any of these, all of these, several other examples too. Visiting a specific page, visiting your website, going to your community, going to your Facebook page, calling your call center, and so on. They're all centered around the individual, what that person does and when they do it. And your behavioral marketing database should be capturing this information, even before they have potentially opted in, before you know who they are. Start gathering this information so that when they do tell you who they are by opting in or by making a purchase, for example, you can then tie those that information together. Your database should be joining the dots so that your very first communications with those prospects can be highly relevant to what they've been doing on your site or with your company before that time. So an example campaign might look something like this, where the customer behavior drives the actions. If someone this is looking at a free trial example. If somebody asks for a free trial, there will be a series of messaging campaigns that looks at whether they've used it, and if they have, drives them into an evaluation and potentially an upgrade path. If they don't use it, to continue along that stream, and I'm going to go through some other specific examples as well. This is a slightly older study from Marketing Sherpa in 2011, but I don't think things have changed massively, and there's still a huge amount of potential here. 60% or so of companies are sending a welcome message or welcome campaign. A lot of them just autoresponders, thank you for signing up. And what Marketing Sherpa calls the kind of manners, the sort of courtesy emails, welcome, thank you, and so on. But if we look further down this line, you can see that they become more behavioral, and the opportunity is larger. Fewer companies are doing this, and I'm going to show you how you can start doing this. But if we look near the bottom here, 1 in 10 companies also doing triggered-based messaging based on website behavior and shopping cart abandonment. So I'm going to talk about 5 behaviors that you can take home and automate today or this week. So, drum roll, please. 5 behaviors that I'm going to talk about today is when someone joins or subscribes to your list, when someone browses, abandons their basket, purchases, and ultimately goes inactive. So onboarding emails, but I'm deliberately calling them onboarding emails rather than welcome emails, because this is your opportunity when someone subscribes to you, subscribes to your company. This is your opportunity to control that initial experience they have, to educate them on your brand, ultimately drive them to convert, and these emails also would reduce inactivity. When someone signs up, they're most engaged with you, or very engaged with you. They want to hear from you, and so this is your opportunity, as I say, to make sure that you take advantage of that, because over time, lots of studies have shown that open rates start to decline. In the US, a third of the largest retailers don't send any welcome emails. And the stats in the UK that I can find tell a similar story. Marketing Sherpa says 63% of all companies send one. That still is a huge amount of companies ultimately that aren't doing them. I would say that they're one of the most important emails your company can send. And here are a couple of examples of a single welcome email and a more onboarding stream of communications for that those initial communications. This is your opportunity to educate your prospects, to build trust. And you should look, in terms of the type of company you are, what your goals are during that time. So for a retail company, it might be to bring back people to your site, to motivate them to purchase, to increase their order size, and to repeat purchase. For an online service, say a photo upload sharing website, it might be to educate, to encourage people to use the service, to get them to use the basic functionality, upgrade to the more sophisticated functionality, retain them, and ultimately upgrade them if you have those kind of services. For a B2B type of company, it would be more about establishing trust. You want to establish credibility, be the thought leader, provide provocative material, useful information, softly promote what it is that you offer, and ultimately to drive leads. So those goals should be reflected in the type of onboarding emails, welcome campaigns that you create. If we then look at a sort of level 2 version of that, start incorporating behaviours, specific, implicit information that these prospects have provided, and incorporating those into your emails. This is so that every welcome campaign can be unique to every subscriber. And so what that looks like here, for example, if we're combining web analytics data or web tracking data. So here, unknown person visits your site, looks at certain pages, maybe watches a video, downloads a white paper. Then when they opt in, that information that you've been collecting and potentially scoring on anonymously, when they opt in, you tie that together and you personalize the email based on that information. So those first communications are even more relevant to what is of interest to those people. Mint.com is an online personal finance client, and this is what their website looks like. They want you to add your accounts so that you can see them all in one place and manage your finances. It has over 7 million users, and this is what their welcome message looks like. You can see it's got a visual of what the website looks like. When they implemented this, by the way, their click-through rate doubled, but it has 5 easy-to-read the value proposition, really, of what they offer. And a little bit of information at the top there in the header about security, and some information on social and mobile at the bottom. After 7 days, it then looks at people who either have or have not added their accounts. If they haven't, clearly this is an opportunity for them to persuade people to do so. So after 7 days, it looks at this. It gives some more. Again, it sort of summarizes the key value proposition, gives a clear call to action to get started today, and at the bottom a little bit of further information about the safety and security. And what they found was that people who weren't adding accounts, one of the main reasons they weren't adding accounts is because of the concerns for bringing all their financial information into a separate website to view this information. So after 2 weeks, again, to try and reassure people and again encourage them back, it looks at people who either have or haven't. Looks at people who haven't added their bank accounts and sends them a follow-up message, which really highlights the security and other concerns that they have, and again provides that call to action. So trying to get people to engage right at the beginning and become stickier earlier on in the relationship. So that's the first behaviour. Second one that I want to look at is web browse abandonment. So different to cart abandonment, it's higher up the funnel. It's for people communicating with people as they drop off your site earlier in the process. In terms of when should you send these messages? Well, I'd argue immediately after the event or shortly thereafter, and then over the next kind of days and weeks as part of a series. And your goal here is to capture sales over time. These people are people kind of higher up the funnel. They're a few stages away from ultimately converting. And so it's important to note that these people probably aren't after a free shipping or an offer. It's more about educating them during the sales process. The opportunity is larger than a basket abandon because they're higher up the funnel too. Now, at the risk of opening myself up to a lot of bad jokes, a number of the examples I'm going to use today are from a client who, well, we've all been pretty worried about what we've been eating recently and perhaps what we've been eating's been eating. So SmartPack, which is what this company is, provide horse supplements, but they've implemented a browse behaviour abandon email program, and with extremely high results. They have picked a few core pages that drive conversions, that have high conversion rates, and they send an email follow-up. They send an email follow-up if somebody abandons one of those pages with information that's relevant to those. So if I give you an example here, this is somebody who's just browsing the "What is a SmartPack" page. If they abandon that page, they're sent an email which clarifies what it is, and give some customer examples of people who are using them, so some case studies. I think that what's important here is not only focusing on those core pages that are drivers of conversion, but also focusing on nurturing, on educating, using content that you already have, videos, calculators, stories from customers and customer services reps. If you drop off the page with the joint supplements, and similarly with the horse supplements, the email follow-up is taking you to a wizard, because one of the reasons that people don't go on to start adding things to the basket is because the choice on the site is very big, and people don't know which might be the right supplement for their horse. So this wizard guides people through. They can enter the breed of the horse, the age, the size, the flavour, and then it advises them which supplement is best for them. So again, it's kind of acting as that virtual sales assistant, providing them with content that helps guide them through that purchasing process. These emails here have a 115% increase in their open rate, and it's over twice the amount of revenue per email of their standard emails as well. Another client who's just in the process of implementing this now, again, looking at people who abandon based on a category and a specific product, sending up follow-up emails based on that information that they browse to teach them more about it, and potentially also provide an incentive. So that's the second behaviour. For the third, I'm going to move one stage further down the funnel, looking at shopping basket abandonments and a remarketing series. These email sales generated from these emails can be as low as 0.5% of an organisation's sales to a high of 70%. I think that a realistic amount to expect would be for a good shopping basket abandonment campaign is about 20% of your sales can be generated from these. Again, it's a series of emails, probably within the hour, or certainly 24 hours maximum. And it's a few emails over a number of days. Typical conversion rates can be anywhere from 10 to 50% on these. From a best practice standpoint, I'd recommend putting incentives later in the series rather than earlier, and including a link to your basket. Here you can see that 70% of shopping baskets are abandoned before checkout. University of Glasgow and Amazed did a study which showed that about 87% of people will abandon a basket, but 75% of them will also return. So getting them to return to complete that purchase. Another tactic that you can use in there is including a product description of what they've abandoned, as well as some reviews, incorporating your own personality, making sure that the content is human, and reassuring them with your tone and approach that they would make the right decision by purchasing. So this is them here. They're closer to purchase, so they're a smaller group, but they've got a high revenue potential. Client Gaylord, who supply library supplies and furniture and archive products, this is an example of their basket abandoned emails. There's no incentive. It's very reassuring. They give a picture of a customer services representative. They're trying to address some of the concerns people might have and why they've abandoned their basket, and give them alternative contact methods. This email alone drives up to a 50% conversion rate. Another library services client, oddly, Demco, their abandoned basket emails account for 0.3% of what they send, but nearly 20% of their email sales. this is what their messaging looks like. A day after you abandon your basket, they give you a courtesy reminder. It's very gentle. It provides a link back to the basket, some customer services details, and a couple of the value propositions. 3 days after, if there's still no conversion, you get a follow-up email, increasing the urgency slightly. But ultimately, the rest of the message is by and large the same. Interestingly, they tested increasing the urgency still further by saying that if you didn't return, that your basket would be emptied over a certain number of days. But people really didn't like that. They phoned in, they complained, they liked using it as a kind of list, so they stopped doing that. So it's more the tone that increases that urgency. And then 5 days after the abandon, again, if no conversions happened, there's a special offer. Now, this special offer, based on their average order value, is really minuscule. It's not a big incentive, but it's a small incentive to encourage people to convert on that final step. And the results they see are this. And the key takeaways from this are, if you only send one, you're still getting a great conversion rate and converting some people who otherwise may not have purchased. But you're missing a trick. If you can send a series of them, the conversion rate here, as you can see, stays fairly steady. The first email with a 22% conversion rate had no offer. That's nearly the same as the last one, which did have the small incentive. These emails have 4 times the open rate of their standard emails, and their average conversion rate is normally around 5%. Their abandon basket rate is about 30%. 30% abandon their baskets, which actually, from an industry perspective, is fairly low. Amy Africa, who's an online B2B marketing consultant, says that average is more like 60%. But ultimately, these emails generate 97 times the amount of revenue per email than their standard broadcast emails, so it's certainly worthwhile doing. Another example of a client here in the UK, Red Letter Days. Again, it's that kind of it's text-based, it's conversational. It reinforces some of the key messaging and gives some other alternative contact methods. 3 down, 2 to go. When people make a purchase, that's great. But what more can we do with them? Ultimately, we want to cross-sell and upsell them, make them a more valuable customer than they are. So going back to the horse example, they've implemented a cross-sell campaign that looks at people who order products on a random basis. So these are their buckets of supplements that they order, and they want people to move to their smart packs, which are recurring monthly, smaller volume, to get that recurring revenue. And so that's what their emails look like. And so here is a simple stream. They're looking for people who bought their first bucket, and then and then following a number of weeks, usually just before they feel that bucket would have run out, and so they make return to purchase another, they start targeting them with upsell emails. And again, if you make that order, people make the order, they're removed from this stream. The key things here are to focus on those products that are most important and to suppress those people who convert. And this is what their emails looks like. The first one is sent about 3 weeks after, and again, it just gives some reasons, some why you'd want to upgrade, no incentive. And then as time moves on, the incentive is increased again to try and drive people to convert. On the last behaviour, this is where we're talking about people who go inactive. So ultimately, what you're looking at here is a re-engagement campaign, and I would argue that I would prefer it if people's efforts were predominantly focused on getting people active in the first place and then maintaining them in that state, because when people really drop off the other end of the scale, it can take an awful lot of effort and resources to get them active again. But we do all have inactives on our list, and they are painful. So I'm going to look at a way that we can start to address that here. But typically, about 40% of your database will be inactive. That's people who, rule of thumb, using about 12 months. People who aren't purchasing, who aren't opening, clicking, responding, interacting. Potentially even 6 months, depending on, you'd want to look at the seasonality of your business and average buying cycle and so on. The impact is felt everywhere. From the top, the potential revenue. These are people who aren't spending with you, but they're also they're inefficient. It's reducing your ROI. You're still making an effort trying to communicate with them, but these are people who potentially may never make a purchase again. They also dampen down your metrics, your open rates, your click-through rates, your effective rates are impacted by this proportion of your list who aren't interested anymore for whatever reason. And lastly here, the potential reduced deliverability. And I'd argue that that is even more important, particularly now that the likes of Yahoo and Gmail are looking at engagement and subscriber engagement to decide whether to, sometimes even mid-send, whether to deliver your email to the inbox or the junk mail box or not at all. So if you have a high proportion of inactives on your list and a high Hotmail, Yahoo, Gmail proportion of your database, then potentially they could be preventing you from speaking to your most valuable customers. So here is an example of a reactivation campaign. When they don't this is SmartPack, who look at people. This is quite an early re-engagement campaign. Their goal is to try and get people as they're becoming unengaged rather than truly inactive, because they want to try and get people before they drop off. Their open rates are not bad as a result, 5.6, and click-through rates of 0.5%. Their looks at 45 days of no behaviour and then starts sending them follow-up emails. And what those look like are here. So from the first one again is a free shipping, and again some information on them why you should continue to want to belong, want to engage with this brand, and then clearer again on the 75 days. What they're doing is evaluating for 30 days of inactivity and then moving these people into a once-a-month communication for about 6 months, at which point they say goodbye. Here are some other examples of a couple of retail clients, again, kind of very incentive-based, trying to get people, finding what that driver will be to get them back. Typical reactivation rates are around 1 to 2%. High performers may see 10%. My voucher codes report a reactivation rate of 20% by implementing re-engagement programs. But ultimately, they are going to be your lower type responding campaigns. So, in general, if you implement if you look to implement these, although it requires that kind of upfront effort to plan them, to develop the content, which is reusing content, then you can spend more time on the beach, which in this weather is pretty welcome. And to finish on another animal analogy, behavioural marketing automation is going to be very big. It's pretty big already, and so I encourage you all to jump on that bandwagon.